Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Jane Atkinson. Jane is a speaker coach, and she works with professional speakers, and she's also author of the book the Wealthy Speaker 3.0, your recipe for building the speaking business of your dreams. She's also host of the Wealthy Speaker podcast. So in her work, she works with professional speakers so she can help them monetize their message. So if you're a technical person who is thinking about making that jump to being a paid professional speaker, well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Jane.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. I appreciate it.
All right. So for the people who are listening or watching our conversation, Jane, and they're thinking, I speak pretty well, and I think I could make a go of it as a paid speaker. What do you
Mhm.
think what's the first thing that they should really consider?
The first thing I would say would be what's the main problem that you want to help solve, or what are some of the outcomes of the knowledge that you have in your brain? A lot of times people have really specific knowledge, but they don't really realize that not everybody has that knowledge. And so I think if you drill it down to what's the number one problem that I want to try and help solve out in the world, that's a really excellent starting point. And we can go on from there.
All right. So now they've given some thought as to what they can talk about. What
Mm-hmm.
do you and then so then once they figure that out, what do you think the next step should be?
Well, the next step is going to be, can I get paid for this? And what we do, kind of here in my business, we have a school called the Wealthy Speaker School, and we help people kind of look at all of the potential topics that they could speak on. And just for the purposes of this show, Neil, we can say that it's keynote speaking, but just know that it could be workshops, could be breakout sessions, concurrence, whatever it might be. But a lot of our clients also do coaching and consulting and all kinds of other things that help solve problems. But keynote speaking could be kind of the main thrust for what we're talking about today. So who's going to pay me to solve this problem is the best next question, because if that's your goal, to be paid, then we want to make sure that there's a market out there for you. There might be some topics where it's like really, really niche and a finite market and a small market. And actually, I don't necessarily discourage those, because sometimes the more specific your information, the higher the price tag on what people will pay for it. But there are markets where there's just nobody out there paying for it. So it might be, teaching people what you learned when you were in India on a kibbutz. It might be that there's not enough there to solve a problem that people will pay to help solve.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly it. I think you're absolutely right. It's kind of figuring out who's willing to pay. How do you, I guess, how should someone go about figuring that out?
Well, once you figure out what your knowledge base really revolves around, then you think, okay, who has this problem? So let's say we choose something like how to energize your team, how to have a more productive team because you've got them energized and motivated all the time. Well, that's something that there's a lot of teams across America who need a shot in the arm. And there are a lot of deals made through decision makers and speakers. And they'll say, listen, my people just need a shot in the arm. They need to be motivated. I need to learn how to motivate them on my own, as well as have you come in and kind of get the ball rolling. And so that's something, if you speak to sales teams about something specific in sales, there's lots and lots of sales meetings going on every single day. So it's kind of, you can ask questions to other speakers. You can ask questions in, if you think that your market might be corporate, then you might talk to people around you who are in corporate and say, hey, is this a problem somebody would pay to solve?
Okay. You mentioned sales, and I think that's an excellent example. There's a lot of people out there that have ideas on how to go about doing it. And as you mentioned, there are a number of organizations that have sales meetings. For someone starting out and wants to speak on that topic, or just any topic really, how do you think they should go about differentiating themselves from all the other people who speak on that topic?
Well, it's such a good question because differentiation is the absolute key. So let's take sales as your broad topic, but let's narrow it down to one particular aspect of sales that you really have the secret sauce to. So what is the element of sales that you know about? Maybe it's using technology to improve your sales and maybe harnessing all the things that are available to you. AI is really hot right now. So what is the aspect of AI that might be applicable to a sales environment and anything that will help drive the bottom line, anything that will help boost their sales could be things that people will pay for. And the first step to getting started. So first we want to kind of narrow it and figure out what piece that you want to be the expert on, but then you could actually go out and start testing it out. So for instance, every city has sales organizations where the associations are filled with people who are in sales. So real estate associations, insurance association, financial planners associations, all of those people sell. And so you might go out to their local meetings in your hometown and say, hey, can I come and offer up a session that I've been beta testing? I'd like to try it out, and I'll do it for free. So we kind of start out on a bit of a freebie circuit just to see if we can gain any traction. And if one speech equals more, then you know you're onto something. If you get 2 or 3 spin-off from one presentation, then you'll know that your speech is hitting the mark.
You had mentioned keynotes before, Jane, and I'm curious, for the people who are considering going into this, become paid speakers, how do they figure out whether it's keynotes they offer or workshops or trainings, consulting, coaching? How do they figure out what services to provide?
Really good. That's a really good distinction to be making for your listeners. Think about keynotes as being kind of like high level ideas. They're at the 10,000 foot. They're not necessarily 10 of this and 20 of this, lists of bullet points and things like that on the page. That's more of a workshop. But if you're giving something to people that really provokes their thought, maybe let's go back to our sales example. Oh, yeah. So your idea should have people walking out of that keynote speech with you thinking, I really need to adopt more technology into my day-to-day sales process. And I have 2 or 3 really solid ideas that I can go and start doing right now. Okay, so it's 2 or 3, not necessarily 10 and 20 and 30 ideas on a page. We call that death by bullet point, by the way. So death by PowerPoint. So think about that as being more workshopy, where sales, your presentations are more ideas driven. And for instance, your PowerPoint might have a beautiful picture and one word on the page, whereas in a workshop setting, it might be, okay, here's 10 ideas for this. Boom, boom, boom.
Okay. For the people who are listening or watching our conversation, Jane, they're thinking, I'm going to go into this. But I think perhaps the low-hanging fruit would be to speak to groups that are similar to mine, perhaps in the same industry. But
Okay.
in the event that they are not groups that pay, you may think maybe I should branch out from this group. How would you be able to position yourself to even approach other industries that you've never worked in?
Well, think about yourself as an expert on that subject matter versus an expert in your industry. as long as your subject matter is applicable to other industries, I think people will welcome input from somebody with a different background. And you don't always have to stay. It's quite funny to me that there's people who come out of, say, real estate who say, okay, I don't want to speak to realtors. I'm going somewhere else, because they're just kind of tired of their industry. They don't want to go into that well. They'd rather fish in other places. And so, yeah, it's done all the time. And it's not that big of a problem when you drill down what your actual expertise is. It may not be industry specific.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I mean, when I first thought about it, that certainly the low-hanging fruit would be to speak to the people that you know already. And then I thought, would there be any sort of pushback if you were to go into some other field where you don't have any experience in it? But I suppose if they're able to see that whatever you're talking about is applicable to their field anyway, regardless of whether you have experience in it or not, then perhaps they'd be just as amenable to taking you on.
But let me clarify, we always do want to start when we're starting kind of our launch campaign. We have a process called Ready, Aim, Launch that we walk people through. And when you're moving into launch, we do want to start warm. So we want to start with people who already know, like, and trust us. And it could be that we do start in our own industry. I'm just saying that you can go outside of it once you're feeling more confident. But yeah, you would definitely want to start with people who might be, it could be friends and neighbors and people from church that are the people who give you your first pieces of business.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right about that. When you were talking, Jane, it reminded me of something you said about perhaps doing free engagements at first. And I
Mhm.
suspect that there might be people that are listening or watching our conversation that are doing that, but they're thinking, how do I actually get paid? I'm tired of doing all the free stuff. I want to get paid for this finally. So how would you suggest they go about finding venues that will actually pay their speakers?
Well, let's say you have done, and we fondly call it the rubber chicken circuit. So the rubber chicken circuit is way back in the day when you would go to the Rotary Club and speak, or the Chamber of Commerce and speak. They would have it at a hotel and they'd have rubber chicken for lunch. So that's kind of where the joke came from, the industry. So when you're on that circuit, the goal is that you ask for the business from the stage. So we have a little technique called the help me speech. We put this in the Wealthy Speaker 3.0 book so that people can kind of examine it and work it into their day-to-day speech. The bottom line on it is that before your closing story in your presentation, so let's say it's a 60-minute keynote, at the 55-minute mark, where they already kind of have some trust for you, you will say something like, as you can see, I am passionate about fill in the blank topic. I am passionate about technology and sales. If you know of anyone who could benefit from this message, please come and see me with your business card after the presentation. Okay, so you've basically done rule number one of business, and you've asked for the business. Okay, so you do your almost entire speech, and then after that you go into your closing story and wrap it up, and then people have an excuse to line up and come and talk to you. And so if they come with their business card in their hand, you're going to ask them questions about, oh, do you know somebody who could benefit from technology and sales? Yes, I do. And then you write down on the back of the card what it is that they say to you, and you follow those things up immediately. And the goal is that when you do that freebie circuit, the rubber chicken circuit, that then spins you off into paid speaking engagements. And I know that it works. I did it. I used to be an agent for professional speakers, so I represented 3 different speakers, and all 3 of them did that exact thing to kind of get their start in the business.
In those instances where perhaps you're told by the organizers, no selling from the stage, how would you address that?
I'd still do it if it's a freebie, especially. I didn't sell anything. I just offered up, come and give me your business card. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair
If
enough.
somebody's asking you to speak for free, I think they can overcome that. When you're getting paid a lot of money, and I do have an example of that. There was a big best-selling author who went up and spoke for, let's say $30,000, and he had a 60-minute presentation. So you work that out on how much it was per minute. And he spent like 15 minutes flogging his book. And the client was so angry because that was actual money out of their pocket that went to his own. And so we're really soft sell in any situation. And that little help me speech is pretty non-evasive. I've never had very many people comment anything about it.
In the event that you're giving a free speech, Jane,
Yeah.
what can you get in the event that you're not getting paid? What could you get instead?
You could ask for, let's say, your local, I don't know, gas station dealership. They have 6 stations and they want you to come in and speak to their employees. Hey, a nice gas card that's going to last you for a year or two would be great. There might be some barter things. If it's a hotel chain, there might be some overnights or some points that they can give you. Some people will ask for videotape of the presentation, especially if the group videotapes everything that they do anyway. You could ask for a copy of it. You could also ask them to refer you. So if you like my presentation, would you refer me to 3 people who might be who might have a budget for their speakers? That's something that I really like, and I would probably ask for all of the above. Okay, yes, I will do it for free if you'll do this, this, and this. So, and people get really creative. One of my clients, the very beginning of her speaking business, she got $200 and free tacos for 2 years. We'll speak for tacos.
Nice.
So you just never know.
Yeah, I like tacos.
That would work for you.
Yeah, free lunch every day. Why not? All right.
Yes.
So with these things that you're getting in exchange for giving a free speech, is that something that you should just ask for, or is that something you should have in some sort of legal agreement?
If we were doing, I would probably put everything in writing, and especially like give them an invoice for 0 and make sure that they know what your normal fee would be. So if you arrive at their doorstep and say, hey, I'm just beta testing a presentation, and it's a meeting that happens every week, then you might not do up a contract for that because it's just so easy not to. But I would, for most presentations, we have a really, I think it's in the Wealthy Speaker 3.0 book, we have a really just easy, legal light speakers agreement. And I just had a conversation on my podcast with David Averin, who's a 28-year speaking veteran. And I said, have you ever sued anybody over an agreement? And he said, no, never. So we don't actually get the lawyers to look over the agreements or anything like that. It's just, what are we doing? Let's write it all down. Okay. Here's the date. Here's the time. Here's the title of the presentation. Here's how many people are going to be in the audience, etc. We put the details down on paper.
I heard him speak on a podcast maybe a few weeks ago, and
yes,
he was saying that giving the speech isn't the thing. It's getting the speech. That's what you really should be focused on. He said during the podcast that some people will focus on a 4-day hand gesture workshop, but they don't do a whole lot about actually getting the business. That made me laugh hard. I had to stop the recording because I was laughing so hard.
Yeah, it's important, but let's also say, adding on to that, and I do agree with getting the business is like your full-time job in the first part. But delivering a presentation, like your best form of marketing, is an epic speech. So if you deliver an epic speech, then you're going to get those 2 to 3 spinoffs. See, he's got his spinoffs coming all over the place. When the phone rings in his office each week, usually 50% of them are spinoffs from something else. And so he's got his speech down. So yes, you don't need to worry about hand gestures, but you do need to give a good presentation, because that's what's going to get you more.
Yeah, for sure. For the
Yeah.
people, I think in a lot of cases, people will start off certainly with those free engagements to get those reps, but then they may go online and they'll reach out to various associations who have calls for speakers. But
Yes.
at least what I found for a lot of those calls to speakers, once you fill out the application and maybe you're accepted, you find out that it's not a paid engagement. So in some cases they won't even pay for your accommodation or your travel to get to the event. What is your take on filling out those call for proposals or call for speaker proposals?
Well, I'll actually tell you what David Avern's office does is they will submit a proposal, and they often get chosen for the proposal. And they'll say, I'm sorry, we won't do that. But if you can get us the keynote, we would do it for free. So they kind of use that as a stepping stone into the organization. What you want to find out is whether or not a call for proposals is for keynotes or for breakout/concurrent sessions. And typically it's maybe like 80% standard that those breakout sessions are not paid presentations. There are some out there. I won't say that it's across the board, but there are some out there that do pay. But your goal, I think, in my world anyway, people are trying to go around that process and ask the questions on the front end. Is this call for proposals for keynotes? When they say no, you say, okay, who does the decision making for the keynotes? That's what you want to know. And it could be that you have enough content that you open up a conference, you're the opening keynote speaker at the conference. And as David says, maybe you agree to stay on and do an afternoon session. Some people will charge more for that. Some people will include it in their fee. He includes it in his fee because his whole thing is being ridiculously easy to work with. And so that's his shtick is, you want something? Yes, is my answer. I'll do it.
Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I suppose if you were to fill out that CFP and then you get picked, but then you find out actually you're not getting paid and there's no money coming your way, but and then you have a decision to make as to whether you still do it or not. And maybe you just look at it as a marketing thing. Maybe if you know
A
that,
showcase. Yes.
right.
If you want to go, if this, first of all, I probably wouldn't do that on places that I have to fly to. So do it in your local events that are coming to your city. And that way you're not flying to do freebies. I don't really encourage people to fly to do freebies unless it's like the perfect showcase opportunity. So maybe back to our sales example, maybe it's the National Association of Sales Professionals and they have a call for proposals and you say, okay, I'm going to fill this out and I'm going to try to get noticed and I'm going to do a breakout session this year with the hopes that somebody spots me and I get bumped up to keynote next year and I get paid.
All right. Yeah, I think that works. I mean, that sounds reasonable. So in the event that you are reaching out to associations or you're reaching out to companies to sell your speaking services, I suspect, or you can correct me if I'm wrong, that perhaps the approach to approaching an association may differ from a company. And if so, how would you go about approaching each of them?
Well, we start with associations because it's easier to find out when their events are and you can go straight for those. So if you know that this national association has an event every August, you might start connecting with them September, October, right after it's played. And that's when your reach outs begin. I love to be able to put into the subject line of an email the name of their event, because then they can't just toss my email away. They have to actually look at it because it's about their event. So that's check mark number one. So it's a lot easier to begin with associations. And then we know that if we can get 200 people from the insurance association, all leaders in one room, that might give us open doors to 200 companies inside the insurance industry. So the spin-off potential in associations is a beautiful thing. That's typically how we get our foot in the door with corporate. So one of our clients, Kendra Hall, she reached out and did a whole bunch of emails to the American Marketing Association chapters and did a lot of not necessarily pro bono, but let's call them low bono presentations, not super, super high fee. But she did them because she knew that the American Marketing Association was filled with Fortune 100 people from all different companies. And so now today, her business, now this is years later, her business is filled with really, really great companies who have big budgets.
All right. Let's say you're reaching out to these organizations and you think that your outreach is perfect, pitch perfect, but you're
Yes.
not getting any response from these people. How do you handle follow-up? And what are you saying in the follow-up?
Well, first of all, it's not pitch perfect if you're getting crickets. Okay. So what we do is we try something and we do a series, right? You need to do a series. So first of all, it's never one email. It's a series of 2, 3, 4. Sometimes people say, it took me 11 times before I actually got them to answer me. So if you can see that they're opening their email, one of the strategies that one of my clients is using right now is if they've opened the email, then they go out on LinkedIn and they connect with them. Kind of straight away. So now it's like 2 touches and the brain has gone in 2 different directions. And this Neil Thompson person keeps showing up on my radar. Oh, there he is again on LinkedIn. So it creates some familiarity, and that technique could work, but definitely have a plan for more than one email, because oftentimes it's the second or the third one that will actually get some traction for you. So don't give up after one. But if you're doing a series of emails and getting crickets all the way across the board, then you have to look at changing it up and trying something else.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when it comes to the follow-up, they may even just think, what do you say? I mean, with the first email, certainly you're looking to introduce yourself and to see if there's a need there. But then
Yes.
in the follow-up email, it's, well, I mean, did you read my email? I'm guessing that's probably not the message you
Well,
want to put out there.
I'm thinking it goes something like, hey, this is who I am, and this is what I specialize in. Is this a fit for your audience? Just checking. I really love a good, short, and sweet email, because if somebody receiving that can just reply and get it out of their in basket, that makes them very happy if they can do it really quickly. And so make it easy for them by asking one quick question. Is this a topic that you'd ever consider? Okay. And then you can maybe get a dialogue going from then. After that, the goal might be to book a discovery call of some sort. So making it easy for them to respond is good. But, email number 2 might be, I recently reached out. I speak on this. I just want to see if this topic is a fit for you. If not, I won't bother you again, something like that. Or that might be email number 3. And then after that, it might be just something like, hey, here's an article that I just wrote on this subject matter. Perhaps it's of interest to you. And that's why I kind of like going at it from a LinkedIn standpoint as well, because then you might send them a link to the article in LinkedIn without a lot of, I don't know if you find this in your industry, but in my industry, there's a term called pitch slapping, where people connect with you on LinkedIn and then they just give you like a big pitch. So I would say whatever you do, keep it really, really short and sweet with something of value for them.
Okay, I like short and sweet. Although I've
Yeah.
heard of other people that say that if in that introductory email, you need to personalize it in some way. Are you a fan of personalization, or does that take away from it being short and sweet?
Oh, I love personalization. So if you've gone out to their LinkedIn profile and learned something about them that could be helpful in your customization of that email, definitely. And the people who take the time to do that are the ones who get the best results. I'm all for it.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
So now we have somebody, they have a speaking topic. They've gone out there. They're trying to get these type of engagements, but hopefully they're getting responses from their emails. Now they have someone who actually bit and wants to hire them. And they ask them
Yes.
how much do they charge. And
Yes.
oh, I didn't think about that. But so when it comes to the how much you charge for your services, how should you go about figuring that out?
Figuring that out. Well, in the book, we talk about kind of $1,500 as being you're in the game. That's a very arbitrary number. It could be $500 and you're happy with that. That's it. Don't necessarily go by that figure, but that's just a good starting point, I think, to get people off the mark. Now, I have clients who come into it because of their resume, because of some of the things that they've done in their history. They come out into the market $10,000. So it's possible for you to charge more, especially if your topic is one that solves a big problem. Anything kind of in the leadership realm, the culture realm. I have a client over in the UK who gets paid $25,000 to speak on empathy in the workplace and things like that. So it's really interesting to kind of, but you have to just start somewhere. And so you want to have it prepared before you get on that Zoom call with that client. You want to actually have a fee schedule and have it written down what you are going to charge for a work, what you're going to charge for a keynote, what you're going to charge for a workshop. And some people will just say it's either a keynote or it's a full day, either or. So I would just be prepared. And then when they ask you your fee, you say the number and then you zip it. There's no, my fee is $1,500, but, and however, or, if you have some tacos, there's none of that. It's basically, my fee is $1,500. And if there's travel involved and I travel from this city, and then you zip it and you see what they say. Don't imagine that you know what their budget is. You don't know. So just go in with confidence. And this is where the mindset piece, we have a big chunk in our school on mindset. And we work on that constantly, because if you go into a negotiation or a sales call or a discovery call with the mindset of I don't want to sell, I don't like any of that, it's not going to work. You have to believe, you have to come to the call with some level of confidence that allows you to say your price and then be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. My price is this, but if you have tacos, I'll take those too.
Yeah. Exactly.
We know that, I think it's fair to say that these organizations, if they do pay speakers, they have a budget. But it sounds like from your experience, you state what you charge as opposed to asking them what their budget is. Is that
Yeah.
fair to say?
Yes, because the expert charges what the expert feels they're worth. And so some people will say, oh, well, do you charge less for schools or do you charge less for nonprofits? Well, all associations are nonprofits. So the answer is no. The expert charges what the expert feels they're worth. And so I would set out your fees. And it doesn't mean that we'll never, ever negotiate. We will negotiate when the opportunity aligns based on some of our criteria. So like a perfect showcase filled with decision makers, yeah, I might say, all right, I will negotiate my fee for that situation. but you may decide that you won't do it for free, because you're already past that part in your career.
What if you were to find out after the fact that your fee is well under what they could have paid you?
That's when that's exactly one of the indicators of when to raise your fee. So when you're sharing the stage with a lot of other people who are higher fees than you, and here's a little insider's tip. If you want to try to find out what professional speakers are charging, go to espeakers.com. They have a whole database of speakers, and you can search your topic and just kind of get a feel for what fees are. So when you're sharing the stage with people who are more than you, when the client tells you, oh, we would have paid more for that, that's definitely an indicator. When something new occurs, like you have a new book or you've received an award or something like that, that could be a time when you raise your fees. And also another time to raise your fees is when you're busy enough that you're like, okay, let's bump it up to the next. I wanted to do 4 a month. I did 5 last month. Let's go ahead and bump it up to the next. You kind of get a feel for the rhythm of the industry and when it's time to raise your fees, but definitely finding out that you're the lowest paid speaker on, a few stages will be something to note.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. In the event that, let's just say, you are, I mean, certainly you're putting yourself out there as this speaker, and you don't like the idea of selling. You think I'm going to make a go of this, and all my business is going to come from referrals, word of mouth, and then I'm going to align myself with speaker bureaus who will send work my way. What is your thought on that strategy?
Well, we recommend that you get out there and learn how to sell yourself first. And the reason we do that is because if you decided that you wanted to train somebody else to sell you, you have to know what you're doing. So I would really I would not call it selling, call it something else. Call it, I'm just getting on a discovery call. And here's a little tip. Show up at those calls just with curiosity. You're not there to sell anything. You're there curious to see whether or not what you have and what they need is a match. And so I would rework the mindset on that. If you don't want to sell, call it something else and learn how to do it, because there should be nobody who can sell you like you. Second thing is, speakers bureaus aren't really interested in launching a speaker's career. They're way more interested in you once you're already off the ground and people are kind of clamoring for you. So when the speakers bureau gets the call, hey, we heard about Neil Thompson, can you go get him for us? Then the speakers bureau reaches out to you. Now you've got some clout with the bureau. But before that, they're really not that interested. And let me give you a few criteria for when you're ready to work with speakers bureaus. Most of them are booking in and around an average fee of about $15,000. So your fee needs to be high enough for the bureau to make some money. You have to have really good marketing materials and a really good demo video in order for this to work. So that's kind of the level when you're ready. And probably by then you will have a good book of business and you can approach the bureaus, but just know that if you approach them with the idea that I don't want to sell myself, can you sell me? It's probably not going to work.
You'd mentioned that a speaker that you work with that charges quite a bit of money to speak on empathy, and it sounded like this person was doing that perhaps not too far out of the gate of becoming a speaker. So are there certain things that you would say that you need to have in place before you can charge those fees, or is it just, it depends?
Well, she paid her dues. So when we started working together, she'd already been in the business for probably 5 years. And she had paid her, she's over in the UK, and she had really paid her dues in the UK. And you cannot get paid as much over there as you can in the States. And so her goal was kind of to start doing more and more. And so it wasn't just she decided to do this and decided to charge a lot. She already had a lot of work under her belt before she moved her fees that high.
All right, that makes sense. In the event that you still have a job, but you're thinking about becoming a paid speaker, how do you balance both of them?
Well, we really like it when our clients have a daytime job because it gives them that security and you can kind of build the business. And then when you see there's the tipping point where you could make more speaking than with your job, that's when you leave. And I think that's a really nice advantage to have. Uh, and that doesn't mean I have a client who just quit her job last week. And so we were only just getting started together. And I'm like, hey, I thought you were going to have your job for a little while longer. But that's okay. It just means that she's going to go full time, full throttle into the business, and she'll have to launch relatively quickly. Balancing it means um, maybe early mornings or late nights sending out emails. The focused hustle still has to take place. It's just going to have to take place not 9 to 5. And if you have a job where you're flexible, it could be that, okay, I work from home every day, 1 hour at lunchtime. I'm just going to focus on my speaking business. I'll set an alarm. And then when I'm done, I'll focus back on my day job. I think that's a terrific way to go too.
All right. So I'm curious about the client that you had that you have that quit her job. In the event that there are people out there that did the exact same thing and they're saying I'm going full throttle. There's no plan B. I'm going to be a paid speaker.
Burn the boats. Yes.
Yeah, burn the boats, right? Yeah, all of that. Burn the bridges, the boats, all the
Yeah.
infrastructure. It all got to go. So in the event that you do that, I mean, I'm thinking certainly there's the idea of prospecting and doing the free engagements, but ultimately the organizations aren't going to bring you in until they're ready to bring you in. And in the event, and in the meantime, you still have bills to pay.
Yeah.
So if you are someone who has done that, I mean, how should you proceed?
Well, she had, I think, a year's worth of bills paid. So she had some security to be able to do that. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because I don't like coming at a pitch or a discovery call or a sales conversation with any kind of financial angst behind you. That's smacking of desperation. And that is not the approach that we want. We want to come from a place of like calm confidence. And let's just see if this is a match and curiosity. It's hard to be curious when you need to pay your mortgage. And so there could be my goal would be that people would have a nest egg to fall back on and just pretend like you don't have one piece of business for a year. Can you pay your bills for a year and still be comfortable?
All right. So having a year's worth of expenses saved up is
Mhm.
probably best. And in the event that in a year's time you ran through all of that savings, hopefully, I mean, what is that a sign that maybe this wasn't for you and maybe you should go get another job?
I really don't have that many people who just completely give up because it doesn't work, but it has happened actually once or twice. And I will say, not to harp on this mindset piece, but I will say that at the heart of the business not working is typically some thought, some mindset problem that says, if you're telling yourself every day, this isn't working, that is not going to get you where you want to go. You have to come at all the activities of the speaking business from that place of confidence. And I will say that looking back on, really, I can only think of one person who dropped out of our school and they just said that I'm going to quit the business and go get a job. And then they kind of still did some things on the side. And I think maybe she was going to end up coming back to it later on. But yeah, really watch out for what your thoughts are in terms of the business and the level of confidence that you're bringing to the table, because that affects everything.
Right. And I suppose also another benefit of keeping that day job while you build up your speaker business is that you can invest in your business in the sense of perhaps joining a program. A program
Yeah.
that will help you build your business so that you're not floundering as much. There's less mistakes to make at the beginning, and you can get someone that really help you just figure everything out. In the
Yeah.
event that someone wants to invest in such a program, should they reasonably expect to get from one?
Well, I'll tell you what we do in the school. We have a entire process. So I would say if you're not sure about that, just pick up the Wealthy Speaker 3.0 and you'll read about our ready, aim, launch process. And what we do then in the school is we go deep and we do video lessons on every piece of the puzzle. Like, how do you set up your speaker's agreement? Here we go. We're going to map it out for you. We're going to tell you all the things that need to go on there. So how do you develop a fee schedule? Here's what needs to go. What do you put in an email that goes out to a prospective client? So we're sharing with you the recipe that's already been proven over and over again to be successful. And I would say, even if it's not my recipe, follow someone's from beginning to end. Because when you try to piecemeal a recipe from, I'll listen to a podcast and then I'll watch a YouTube video and then you're really parceling together a business strategy. It would be better to follow one from beginning to end.
Yeah. And in the event that you are thinking about, investing in such of a program, I guess, what should you look for in even deciding which one to pick?
I would look for a really strong formula that's easy to follow. I would look for ability to get your questions answered. Okay, you're not just going to give me the information and then leave me hanging. You're going to allow me to answer, get my questions answered. One of the things that we have in our mastermind is actual one-on-one coaching. And I think that the people, and I do private coaching myself as well, and I know that the people who do anything with private coaching involved in it, they get so much faster. Because I'm going to then take the material that I just learned, I read it in the book, I did it in the course, whatever, and then I'm going to come to you and say, should I do that? And then I'm going to say to you as your coach, let's customize that. Let's take away that based on how much you've got going on in your life. Let's not do that and that and that. Let's focus in on this and really leverage your time. So that's what I would suggest, is that you look for something with coaching.
I like that, Jane. You know why I like that? Because
Why?
a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with someone about what coaching is. And he says coaching is helping somebody come to the answers themselves.
Yeah,
But
that's normal coaching. That's normal. Like when I was trained as a coach by the Coaches Training Institute, that's what I was trained on. The kind of coaching I'm talking about would really blend more into consulting, where basically you ask me the question and I tell you what to do.
yes,
I give you the answers.
that's
Like,
what I want.
that's traditional coaching. Okay. So business coaching should not be, let me help you find your own answers. Business coaching should be, you ask me the questions and I tell you the answers.
That's what I'm about. I'm like, man, if I had the answer, what the hell I need you for?
Exactly.
I don't
Exactly.
have mindset problems really. I just need to know what to do. Like, come on,
Yeah.
man. But no, I mean, you're just telling them everything that you're thinking about, and they're just asking you questions back. You're like, God damn it, man! Do you have an answer? All these questions. I need some periods here.
Now I know to all of your, this is called Teach the Geek, right? I know to all of these technical people, that whole mindset conversation, it feels very woo-woo. But I will say that there's only two things that are required to become successful in speaking. Number one is kind of like the all-in mindset, like some sort of just like a commitment, a 100% commitment to it. And number two is consistent action.
Yeah.
Mindset, consistent action. That's it. That's all you need. And for the people who do struggle, that's the first place we look, is the mindset, because we know that that can be a real game changer for people. So don't underrate it. If it sounds woo-woo to you, don't underrate it.
Yeah, I certainly get it. You definitely you have to have the mindset to be successful, and even have the mindset that when obstacles come up, their first inclination isn't to stop and revert back to what you were
Exactly.
doing. It's the,
It's the obstacles that are the things that really take us down. And I find that even in my personal life, I'm constantly examining, well, I feel really bad over here about something. As you know, I've gone down this big caregiver road. My mom is 94 and has Alzheimer's and has broken her hip and her leg in the last 4 months. And so whenever I start to feel myself spiral into the despair, I just check in on like, well, what am I actually thinking about this? And what do I want to think? Like, let's just be more intentional about it. And then I can get to a much better place very quickly. So it really is helpful to think about that in your life in general.
Yeah, glass half full as opposed to glass half empty, I suppose.
Yes. Yes.
In the
Yes.
so for the people who are aspiring to be paid professional speakers, I've often
Mhm.
heard the advice that they should surround themselves with people who are also on that journey, or not necessarily on that journey, but also those who are further ahead on that journey. So in the event that you want to find those people who are perhaps are further ahead than you in being a paid speaker, how would you suggest they go about doing so?
Well, you can look at your local National Speakers Association chapter. That's one option. You can look at our school, the Wealthy Speakers School. There are people at all different levels there. Um, those are a couple of options for you. I think NSA has chapters in most major cities, and uh, I learned everything I know about speaking through those meetings at NSA.
I have a gripe that I want to share with you, Jane. And
Okay.
it has to do with aspiring speakers reaching out to speakers that are further ahead. And I often get the sense that the ones who are further ahead may be put off by those aspiring speakers because the aspiring speakers are asking of the further along, the more seasoned speakers for their assistance, but
Mhm.
they don't get any, but the more seasoned speakers don't get any assistance from those aspiring speakers. The relationships tend to be very one-sided. If you're an
Yeah.
aspiring speaker, how can you make sure that the relationship is more two-way than one-way?
Well, that's difficult to do when you're just starting out. You really are in a receiving mode. Um, just saying, hey, I'd like to buy you lunch. I'd like to buy you coffee. I think if I'm a busy speaker who's traveling a lot, that may not be how I choose to spend my time. But let's say you go to your local NSA meeting and you sit next to someone and you tell them where you're at, and they're like, hey, well, I'd be happy to have coffee with you. That's the environment that they breed there. And so I think it's definitely a possibility. And some people have a process that, because they get asked so frequently, like David Averin, he gets asked 20 times a day, could you mentor me? And so he'll say, go and buy the Wealthy Speaker 3.0 first, and then do this, and then do this, and then email me and I'll talk to you about, what your questions are or whatever. Like he has a very specific way of managing that because it's happened so frequently to him.
That makes perfect sense. And now, then you get to really see who's about it, who's actually going to
If
do those,
somebody
do
won't
what you
even
say.
go and buy a book, then they're not really that interested. If you won't
Facts.
spend 20 bucks on a book, then okay, you're not
Yeah,
really willing to invest in your career.
100%. Yeah, that's a great way to weed people out.
Mhm.
I suspect.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. And then, okay, so now we have somebody, they are gung ho about being a speaker. They got their speaking topic. They're ready to reach out to people. They got the right mindset. They're thinking about the money. They're not thinking about tacos. So they got it all. They got it all together. What do you think that they need to have in place? I think you mentioned a reel before, but are there other things that they need to have in place for them to actually put themselves out there as a paid professional speaker?
Well, the first thing for sure is a website that, you know, positions you as a professional. When you're ready, I would say no video is better than a bad video. So wait until you have some decent footage. And even if you only put a little 10-minute clip out on your website, that's fine to get started. You want to have decide ahead of time where you're going to do your social media. If you're targeting business, then go out on LinkedIn. Maybe you choose LinkedIn and Instagram as your two places, and that's all you focus on. I would recommend you go deep on two and not try to be on every channel. And basically a website, and you're off to the races. You can start talking to people, and your goal is to have them open up the link to that website. Your goal is to plant the seeds. Think of it as a blank farmer's field, and you're just going to get out there and start seed planting to get people to look at you as a professional speaker, to get people to drive people to your website. And the more seeds you plant, the more harvest you will see. Sometimes we need to go back and fertilize a little bit. That's cool. It could be that it takes 2 or 3 years before you actually see things actually starting to come to fruition for yourself. And I have a client who had another very, very successful business, and he came over into this and he did everything right, and it still took him 3 years.
Wow. Okay. 2 to 3 years. Okay. So that's good information to know for the people who are thinking, I'm going to burn the boats. Well, damn it. It might take you 2 to 3 years to make it a sustainable business out of it. So
yeah, maybe save a couple of rafts.
Yeah, for real. Absolutely. This has been a great conversation, Jane. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, they can come to my main website, which is speakerlauncher.com. That's my personal private coaching website. Or if they're interested in our school, it's wealthyspeakerschool.com. wealthyspeakerschool.com.
Excellent. Well, this is the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.